Have you ever been told that some things are private? That they should stay behind closed doors, unspoken? Society has a way of making us feel ashamed about perfectly natural aspects of our own bodies. But what if I told you that one of these private, unspoken acts, something you might have been doing for years, even decades, could be silently setting the stage for a health crisis after the age of 50? What if this seemingly harmless habit, this personal moment, is actually a hidden trigger for problems you're desperately trying to avoid? What if I told you that for men, it could be connected to a type of inflammation that traditional medicine is only now beginning to understand? One that doesn't just affect your prostate, but your entire vascular system. And for women, what if this same act, thought to be a source of stress relief, could actually be depleting your body of vital nutrients and hormones, accelerating the very aging process you are fighting against every single day? You think you know your body. You think you understand pleasure and health. But today, I'm going to pull back the curtain on a truth so uncomfortable, yet so crucial, that it might just change everything you thought you knew about aging well. For those of you who are new here, my name is Dr. James Howard. For over 35 years, I've worked in various fields of medicine, from internal medicine to hormonal therapy and regenerative health. My mission here on the Prime Age Health Channel is not to scare you, but to empower you. It is to take the complex, often confusing, and sometimes contradictory information that's out there and give you the clear, actionable truth. I've dedicated my life to helping people like you navigate the challenges of aging, not just to live longer, but to live better, with more vitality, more energy, and more joy. The tone shifts to be warm and inviting. The tone shifts to be warm and inviting, fostering a sense of connection with the audience. It's a moment to build rapport before diving into the core content. And before we go any further, I want to build our community of health seekers. Please, take a moment to write in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is in your part of the world. It's always incredible for me to see how far this message of health travels, connecting us all in this shared mission. And if you believe in this mission, if you want to take back control of your health, go ahead and press the like button and subscribe to the channel. It tells the world that this information is important, and it ensures you won't miss a single vital update. Today, we are going to talk about the potential downsides of masturbation for those of us over 50. This is not about shame or morality. This is about physiology. This is about understanding how our bodies change and how an act that might be perfectly benign or even beneficial in our youth can present new challenges as we age. I'm going to reveal 5 specific negative points, 5 hidden risks you need to be aware of. And I urge you, with the utmost sincerity, to stay with me until the very end. The 5th point is by far the most critical. It's the one that connects this private act to one of the most feared diseases of aging, and understanding it is the key to protecting yourself. Let's begin. The first negative point we need to discuss is what I call hormonal depletion syndrome. Now, this isn't a term you'll find in most standard medical textbooks, but it's a concept I've seen play out in my practice time and time again. When a man or a woman reaches orgasm, the body is flooded with a cocktail of hormones. For a moment, there's a surge of oxytocin, prolactin, and endorphins, which feels wonderful. It's nature's reward system. However, the creation of these hormones and the seminal or vaginal fluids that are released requires a significant expenditure of biological resources. Think of your body's hormonal reserve like a bank account. When you're 25, you have a massive account with a high interest rate. You can make frequent withdrawals, and the account replenishes itself almost immediately. But when you're 55, that account is smaller. The interest rate is lower. The replenishment process is slower and more demanding. For men, the production of semen requires zinc, selenium, and specific amino acids, nutrients that are also critical for immune function and testosterone production. For women, the hormonal shifts around orgasm, while complex, also draw from a finite pool that is already being challenged by menopause or perimenopause. I remember a patient, let's call him Robert, a 62-year-old man who came to me complaining of profound fatigue, brain fog, and a complete loss of his drive for life. His blood work was a puzzle. His testosterone was low, but not critically so. His thyroid was sluggish, but within the normal range. He was eating a decent diet and exercising moderately. For months, we were chasing symptoms. Then, during a deep dive into his daily habits, he sheepishly admitted to a lifelong habit of masturbating daily, sometimes twice a day, as his primary way to cope with stress. It was his only release. On a hunch, I put him on a high-dose nutrient protocol, focusing heavily on zinc, selenium, and high-quality protein, the very building blocks he was depleting. And I asked him to try an experiment, to reduce the frequency of his habit to just once or twice a week. The change was not immediate, but over 3 months, it was staggering. His energy returned, his mind cleared, and his natural testosterone levels began to climb. The lesson here is not that masturbation is bad, but that at a certain age, the cost of frequent withdrawals from your biological bank account can become too high. The solution is awareness. It's about moderation and ensuring you are aggressively replenishing the specific nutrients your body is expending. The second point, and this is particularly crucial for men, though it has implications for women as well, is the risk of pelvic floor dysfunction and nerve desensitization. The pelvic floor is a complex sling of muscles and ligaments that supports your bladder, bowels, and reproductive organs. It's a critical, yet often ignored part of our core anatomy. The act of masturbation, especially when performed with a tense grip or aggressive technique over many years, can lead to chronic tension in these muscles. Imagine clenching your fist as hard as you can for a few seconds. Now imagine doing that for minutes at a time, day after day, for decades. Eventually, those muscles would become chronically tight, leading to pain and dysfunction. This is what can happen to the pelvic floor. For men, this can manifest as chronic pelvic pain, a feeling of pressure, urinary hesitancy, or even erectile difficulties. Furthermore, the nerves in the penis or clitoris are incredibly sensitive. Overstimulation, particularly with a consistent, unvaried technique, can lead to a gradual desensitization. It's like stripping the insulation from a wire. The signal just doesn't travel as effectively anymore. I worked with a lovely woman, Susan, who was 58. She and her husband had recently rekindled their physical relationship after years of being more like roommates. But she came to me in distress because she felt nothing. She knew she loved her husband, she was emotionally engaged, but she couldn't achieve arousal or orgasm with him. After a sensitive discussion, she revealed a long-standing habit of using a high-powered, very specific type of vibrator for release. Her nervous system had become so conditioned to this intense, targeted stimulation that the more subtle, nuanced sensations of intercourse were no longer enough to register. Her brain had literally been rewired for a type of stimulation that her partner could not replicate. The solution in these cases is twofold. First, for the muscular tension, it involves conscious relaxation. It involves practices like pelvic floor physical therapy, deep breathing exercises that engage the diaphragm and release the pelvic bowl, and even yoga or stretching. It's about learning to let go of that chronic clenching. Second, for the nerve desensitization, the solution is sensory retraining. This often means taking a break from the habitual form of masturbation and re-exploring different types of touch, different locations, and different levels of pressure. It's about resensitizing the nerves to a wider range of stimuli. It takes patience, but the body has a remarkable capacity to heal and recalibrate if you give it the chance. Our third point delves into the psychological and emotional realm, something I call dopamine dysregulation and reward circuit fatigue. Every time you experience pleasure, whether from a good meal, a hug, or an orgasm, your brain releases a neurotransmitter called dopamine. It's the molecule of motivation and reward. It tells your brain, "That was good, do it again." This system is essential for survival, but it can be hijacked.
Masturbation, being a reliable and instantaneous source of intense pleasure, provides a powerful dopamine hit. When you are younger, your brain's reward circuitry is resilient. But as we age, and particularly if we use this act as our primary coping mechanism for stress, boredom, or loneliness, we risk fatiguing this circuit. Think of it like using a credit card for all your emotional needs. It's easy, it's fast, and it works in the short term. But over time, you build up a huge debt. The dopamine receptors in your brain start to downregulate. This means you need a bigger and bigger stimulus to get the same feeling of pleasure or satisfaction.
Let me tell you about a patient named Frank. At 68, he was a retired executive, financially secure, with a loving family. Yet, he felt a profound sense of emptiness, a gray blanket over his life. He called it the blahs. He couldn't find joy in his hobbies anymore. Golf felt like a chore. Playing with his grandkids felt muted. His marriage was stable but lacked spark. He wasn't depressed in the classic sense, but his world had lost its color. In our sessions, we discovered his deeply ingrained pattern. Anytime he felt a pang of anxiety or a moment of boredom, he would retreat to his study for a few minutes of private release. It was his automatic, unconscious emotional regulator. He had, in effect, trained his brain that the only true reward came from this one specific act. The pleasure he got from a beautiful sunset, a good conversation, or a delicious meal paled in comparison, and his brain had stopped valuing them. The solution for Frank was not to eliminate masturbation, but to consciously cultivate other sources of joy and satisfaction. We made a list. He started taking walks in nature without his phone. He scheduled weekly dinners with old friends. He took up a woodworking project he'd always dreamed of. He had to consciously force himself to seek out and appreciate smaller, more sustainable pleasures. Slowly, painstakingly, he rewired his brain's reward circuit. The color came back into his world. The key is to ensure that masturbation is a source of pleasure in your life, not the source. This brings us to our fourth and deeply important point, the disconnect from intimate partnership. This is a subtle poison, one that can seep into the foundations of a long-term relationship without either partner fully understanding what is happening. As I mentioned earlier, when masturbation becomes a highly specific, efficient, and private habit, it can inadvertently create a chasm between you and your partner. The human sexual response is not just a mechanical act. It's a symphony of emotional, psychological, and physical attunement. Partnered intimacy requires communication, vulnerability, patience, and a willingness to meet another person's needs and rhythms. It's a dance. Masturbation, by its very nature, is a solo performance. You are the conductor, the orchestra, and the audience. There's no need to consider anyone else's timing, desires, or emotional state. When this becomes the primary outlet for sexual release over years, it can erode the very skills needed for partnered intimacy. I counseled a couple, Bill and Diane, both in their early 60s. They came to me on the brink of divorce. Diane's complaint was that Bill was distant, emotionally unavailable, and showed no interest in her physically. Bill, in his defense, said he simply had a low libido and didn't understand what the big deal was. He insisted he loved her. The truth came out during an individual session with Bill. He didn't have a low libido at all. He had a private libido. For over 20 years, he had been masturbating nearly every morning in the shower. It was quick, efficient, and met his physical needs. But it left him with nothing left to give his wife. He had been having an affair with himself, and it starved his marriage of the sexual energy it needed to thrive. He hadn't just been avoiding sex with Diane, he had been avoiding the vulnerability, the messiness, the beautiful complexity of real intimacy. The solution here is one of the most challenging, yet one of the most rewarding. It requires honesty and courage. It involves talking to your partner.
It might involve reframing masturbation not as a secret act of release, but as a part of one's personal sexuality that can be shared or at least acknowledged. For some couples, it means making a conscious choice to bring that sexual energy back into the relationship, perhaps by abstaining from solo acts for a period to rebuild mutual desire. For others, it might even involve exploring self-touch together. The goal is to break the pattern of secrecy and isolation and use that energy to refuel the connection you have with the person you love. Don't let a private habit create a public distance in your most important relationship.
The fifth point and final point. The pace slows dramatically. The tone becomes deeply serious, signaling to the viewer that the promised, most crucial piece of information is about to be delivered. And now we arrive at our fifth and final point, the one I urged you to wait for. If you have been zoning out, if you are multitasking, I ask you to give me your full attention for these next few minutes. Because this information connects a seemingly benign habit to the insidious process that underlies heart disease, stroke, Alzheimer's, and nearly every chronic disease of aging. This is, by far, the most important risk we need to discuss. The fifth point is the promotion of systemic inflammatory cascades through prolactin surges. After orgasm, the pituitary gland releases a significant amount of the hormone prolactin. This is what is largely responsible for the feeling of satiation and sleepiness afterwards, the so-called refractory period. In younger bodies, this hormonal surge is temporary and well managed. But in a body over 50, a body that is likely already dealing with low-grade chronic inflammation from diet, stress, or environmental toxins, these repeated, sharp surges of prolactin can act like gasoline on a smoldering fire. Here is why this is so dangerous. High levels of prolactin have been shown to have pro-inflammatory effects. They can increase the production of inflammatory cytokines, which are like little alarm bells that tell your immune system to attack. When this happens over and over again, day after day, it contributes to systemic inflammation. This inflammation is the silent killer. It's what makes your blood vessels stiff and hard, leading to high blood pressure. It's what causes the plaque in your arteries, the biological cement, to become unstable and rupture, triggering a heart attack or stroke. It's what damages the delicate neurons in your brain, contributing to cognitive decline and dementia. Every time you are inducing a massive prolactin surge through a solo act, you could be contributing to this slow, silent burn throughout your entire body. Now, I want to end not with fear, but with a story of incredible hope. It's the story of a man I'll call George. When George came to my clinic at 72, he was a walking textbook of age-related disease. He had type 2 diabetes, his blood pressure was dangerously high despite being on 3 different medications. He had severe neuropathy in his feet, and his memory was starting to fail him. He was on 12 pills a day, and his life had shrunk to the 4 walls of his home. He was just waiting to die. His doctors had told him this was just the reality of getting older. George was a widower. His wife had passed away 5 years prior, and his loneliness was a palpable force in the room. He confessed to me, with great embarrassment, that his only comfort, his only release from the crushing loneliness and the physical pain, was to masturbate multiple times a day. It was a compulsion. He would watch pornography for hours, seeking a momentary escape from his bleak reality. He was caught in a vicious cycle. The loneliness and poor health drove the compulsion, and the compulsion, with its constant hormonal and inflammatory surges, was exacerbating his poor health. His body was in a constant state of inflammation, and his dopamine circuits were completely burned out. We had to break the cycle. This wasn't about shaming him, it was about saving his life. We started not by taking away his only coping mechanism, but by adding things in. We completely overhauled his diet, focusing on intensely anti-inflammatory foods, leafy greens, berries, healthy fats, and clean proteins. We put him on a targeted supplement regimen to combat the inflammation and replenish the nutrients he had depleted: high-dose omega-3s, curcumin, zinc, and magnesium. The first goal was to heal his body from the inside out, to lower that systemic inflammatory fire. Then we addressed the habit. I didn't tell him to stop. I asked him to try and reduce it by 1 time a day. And in the time he would have spent on that habit, he had to do something else from a life menu we created. It had simple things on it: call a friend, walk to the end of the block and back, listen to a piece of classical music without distraction, read 1 chapter of a book. The goal was to build new neural pathways, to show his brain there were other ways to get a sense of relief or pleasure. The first few weeks were hell for him, but then something shifted. As the inflammation in his body began to subside, his blood sugar started to stabilize. His blood pressure dropped a few points. The fog in his brain began to lift just a little. He started to feel a flicker he hadn't felt in years: hope. Motivated by this flicker, he began to embrace the changes more fully. He joined a senior walking group. He reconnected with his estranged son. He found that the urge, the desperate need for that compulsive release, began to fade. It was no longer his only source of comfort. 6 months later, George walked into my office a different man. He had lost 40 pounds. His diabetes was in remission. He was off 2 of his 3 blood pressure medications. But more importantly, his eyes were bright. He was laughing. He told me he was taking a cooking class and had met a woman there. He wasn't just surviving anymore. He was living. He had broken the inflammatory cycle and, in doing so, had reclaimed his life. George's story is the perfect illustration of everything we've talked about today. The issue was never the act of masturbation itself. The issue was the frequency, the dependency, and the hidden biological cost in an aging, inflamed body. It was about the hormonal depletion, the nerve desensitization, the dopamine fatigue, the disconnect from his late wife, and most critically, the constant, unrelenting inflammation driven by those prolactin surges. By addressing the root cause, the inflammation and the emotional void, he was able to heal. My mission here at Prime Age Health is to give you the tools to do the same. It's to help you look beyond the obvious symptoms and understand the interconnected web of your own health. It's about empowering you to make small, conscious choices that have profound impacts on your vitality and longevity. Helping you navigate this journey is my passion, and it is my commitment to you. If this video has opened your eyes, if it has given you a new perspective on how to manage your health after 50, then please subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you never miss these vital conversations. Share this video with someone you care about, because this is information that can truly change and even save a life. And don't stop here. The key to lasting health is continuous learning. Keep watching, keep learning, and keep taking those small steps every single day. I've selected another video for you to watch next that will continue you on this path. Thank you for your time and your trust. Be well.